Hello. So these are all tomatoes from my garden that I froze that today we're going to be preserving up because I don't have any more room in my freezer. But wait, there's more. We got another whole basket here. And another bag that had to go in the fridge because the freezer was out of room. If you want to see what I do with all these tomatoes, please stick around because it is going to be a long day and probably a couple more after that too. So without further ado, let's just get started. So as you saw, I have a bunch of tomatoes that I need to preserve up, which is such a blessing. I have gotten to this point 85 pounds of tomatoes this year, which is crazy, and I just feel so thankful and so happy about it. But at the same time, this is the earliest I've had to preserve and start canning and start just getting things ready to be stored up because I'm running out of room. So I think my agenda for today with what I'm going to make is I'm going to do some tomato juice because I like having tomato juice for tomato soups or even like chilies and stuff like that. So I'll do that, and that's an easy one. And yeah, I think I'll just put all those tomatoes in my huge pot and just render it down for that purpose. And then you'll see what I do. I'm not going to waste a thing. So the skins and the seeds, I'm not getting rid of them. I'm going to keep them aside to use for maybe making either tomato paste or tomato powder. We'll have to see. We'll see how much it makes. Oh, I didn't even show you. I harvested again last night and I didn't have anywhere to put it in the fridge. So the pot already has tomatoes in it. I really need to get started with dealing with these tomatoes, of course. So what I'm going to start by doing is just taking the leaves off the top, taking the stems off. And so I'm going to have it one bowl to just put the stems. Those are going in the compost. I'm not going to make a huge deal on, I'm not going to blanch them to get the skins off or anything on the ones that haven't been frozen, because when doing the juice, I'll have to render it all out anyway to make it, pure. So I'm going to have to do that process anyway. So let me get my setup going and then we'll just start. I have a long ways to go, so we better just start. Okie dokie. We got a couple of bowls right here and we got all of our tomatoes. So let me get these somewhere. I'll just set those in the sink. And let's just get going, shall we? So many of them are cherry tomatoes, so it'll be interesting to see how making these products goes with the cherry tomatoes. Of course, they're not ideal, and I haven't heard of anybody doing it before, but I'm not going to waste them. I can't eat them all. I'm going to make them into other things as well. I might as well process them down and just add it to the bunch. I think it'll be good. So I guess I'll start with the ones that are in here already because I need to put them somewhere. I'm going to go ahead and grab my knife too and see where this one has scarring. I'm just going to take that off because that's not really pleasant. And the huge ones too, I'm going to cut up before I put them in the pot, just so that they will render down quicker, easier, all that good stuff. So like with this big one, I'm just going to cut it up into big chunks, and then I'll make smaller chunks, but that'll just help it break down. The best tomatoes, of course, for paste and these kinds of projects would be paste tomatoes. I got the classic Amish paste. I also have this orange variety. I think it's called Icicle Orange, but they just have a little bit of a different flavor than a normal paste, but still that really, meaty innards. So I think they're going to be a great addition. They're not as meaty as the Amish paste. I think Amish paste just wins all around for, best paste tomato for that purpose. But it's good to have variety, I think. And these cherry ones, I'm just going to kind of squeeze as I'm putting them in, just because it's easier to do that than like slicing them. That seems like a little bit of a not needed step. So just give them a squeeze. I think I mentioned that the majority of my tomatoes have been the cherry, but the bigger ones have been coming on great. Now, of course, they take more time to ripen as they are bigger, so that just makes sense. The cherry tomatoes are still coming on super strong. They're just starting, some of the plants are just starting to look a little bit sad, but they're still coming on strong. I can't wait to see the, end of the season total for all the pounds of tomatoes, because I already just can't believe we've already hit 85 pounds. 85 pounds. That's insane. That's crazy. I have been gardening for about 6 years now, and it just gets absolutely better every year, of course, but this is by far my best garden year, and I already have so much for plans for really just taking the garden to the next level for the next season. I'm really excited to get all of this processed and just to keep learning, because that's part of the fun and the learning process with gardening, that as you get better with gardening, you have to also get better with preservation and just using the things you have, knowing more recipes. I'm also now looking forward to this season where I am making more, canning more, doing more after the garden season, because I have so much more abundance. And that's why it's great to just start out with what you have, because things grow with you. If I was given this many tomatoes in my first year gardening, I'd have no clue. I'd probably just would have tried to freeze them all and then not know what to do when the freezer was full, and I couldn't tell you what would have happened. But my garden is growing with me, I guess you can say, and that is amazing. But I was also saying that the big tomatoes have really started coming on great. So we have such a great variety of tomatoes going on, and a little bit of a different flavor from each one. So I'm really quite excited to see how this turns out. Typically, when you see people making tomato products, canning up tomato stuff, they're using the majority Amish paste with maybe some other big varieties in there. I've never seen anybody try to put cherry tomatoes in it. And of course, that's just because there's no reason to use cherry tomatoes if you have other ones. Like, cherry tomatoes are for snacking. But I have so many of them that I can't preserve them all other ways. So it's just going to be fun seeing how this turns out, how the end product. I think it'll also not be as deep of a red color because so many of my tomatoes are yellow and orange. So that'll be just kind of interesting. It's fun to experiment and do things that, not everybody is necessarily doing. Oh, there's a pretty one. There's a pretty tomato. I might just eat that one in a minute. But another thing we're going to do too, and I'm going to start now, is take something like a potato masher and just really mash those tomatoes, because I'm really trying to get all that juice out. That's what we're going for. Beautiful. I truly don't know if all of these will fit in this huge pot at the same time. They might, but they also might not. I'm not sure. We'll definitely do a couple batches if not. But wow, just so many tomatoes. I'm going to say that more times than I need to, but woo! This is not all the way to the top. It's about to here. But I think I'm going to go ahead and get this on the stove top. Let's see how well I do even lifting it. I've been working out, so hopefully it's not too hard, but I can see it's going to be really heavy. And these bags of tomatoes are still thawing out, and they'll be easier for me to deal with once they're a little bit more thawed. So let's get this on the stove. Ready? Oh, that's not bad. So I'm gonna make sure I keep stirring this about every 30 minutes. I don't want any tomatoes to burn on the bottom of the pot or on the sides of the pot. And we're gonna reduce this by about half. So that basically just means where the tomatoes come up to on the pot, we're gonna stop the process when it's halfway from that point to the bottom. While those are heating on the stovetop, I'm gonna go ahead and take some of my cherry ones and cut them up again to do the sun-dried. They're not sun-dried, they're oven-dried, but the dried cherry tomatoes. I did them in my August harvesting video, and I mentioned that I don't usually like dried fruit, but they turned out really good, and I didn't actually even use them for anything because I just snacked on them. So I'm gonna make more of those because why wouldn't I when I have so many tomatoes? So that just involves me getting some avocado oil or olive oil. I just have avocado and some salt and pepper and just putting some trays, slicing these in half and putting them out. So I'm gonna go get the trays. Okay, please forgive how messy the kitchen is. It is a canning day, and so, as everybody knows the rule, all messy kitchens are excused on canning and processing days. But while my tomatoes are over processing on the stove, I'm just going to go ahead and get the canner set up. Just the more we do now and don't have to worry about later, the better for sure. So I'm going to go ahead and fill the canner up to the line. I have a line in this canner. This is a Presto digital pressure canner, and I really love it. I definitely recommend it for those who are very new and have maybe small urban gardens like I do, or are really just getting started or not sure how far you want to take it, because the beauty in this is it takes a lot of the not necessarily difficult but things you have to think about more. It takes them away from you so you don't have to do them. You also don't have to be right here to tend this. Now, I probably wouldn't go like on a walk and leave the house completely personally. You probably could, but with normal canning, you have to check that pressure, make sure it's staying at the right correct pressure during the whole process, because if not, then things are not going to be done correctly, and there is chance for things like botulism or just not sealing correctly, all kinds of things. But with this, it does that all for you. The downsides to this, of course, is I wouldn't be able to can or do anything if I didn't have power, because a lot of those other canners, like the All American, you can put on the stove top. I have a gas stove. This, you have to be plugged into electricity. That's one downside. Second downside is it's not that big of a canner. I think it's a decent size, but when you get looking at canners, there's some really big ones. This one does either 6 or 7 pints. I think it's 7 pints at a time. And it's like 4 or 5 quarts. I'm going to find out in a second because that's what I'm going to be canning today with the tomato juices quarts. I can't remember. So it doesn't do that many at a time. When you have more food to do, it can take longer. But again, like I said, the upside is you can go do other things. You can get other chores done. You can go do your workouts, whatever you want to do while it's going. So although you can water bath can tomato juice and you can water bath can in this canner, I'm just going to pressure can it. The Ball book has a recipe on pressure canning tomato juice, and I'm not sure why, but I just kind of like pressure canning more than water bath canning. That's just kind of a me thing. So I'm going to continue to fill this up to the line, and then I am going to go get my jars and get things set out and just start getting things ready to go. With this canner, it does the cleaning of the jars for you as well. So I'm just going to fill up each of the jars with about half a thing of water, put it in, and the canner itself has the cleaning process ahead of time. Yep, so this canner, you can fit 5 quart jars in here, and I believe it is 7 for the pints. So that just confirms it. I'm going to go ahead, take that part off, pop this on, and then start setting up kind of my little space. You definitely want towels, lots of towels for these kinds of processes. I'll need this to measure out lemon juice, and I will also need the lemon juice. And I got my ball lids. I got these, of course, and I have my handy dandy jar picker upper, as you know, the smart people call it. And I'm gonna want a little towel to wipe rims with. Okay, everything's ready to go. And so once that's ready, then we'll really be able to start the process. It'll be great. So I'll get back to you when the tomatoes are ready to be strained. Okie dokie artichoke. So the tomatoes are great. They are ready for me to strain for the tomato juice. I'm gonna go ahead, take this dirty towel off, even though we're gonna get more tomatoes everywhere. I'm just trying to keep things tidy to a certain extent, and you just don't want to have wetness kind of staying on the counters for too long. It is not good for the counters. So we got a dry towel. Let me grab the pot off the stove. Maybe I should really double up. It's gonna be hot. This is where I wish I had more bowls. Let me see. Okay, very important to have a nice mesh strainer like this, because what I am gonna do is completely strain it, and then that will be the tomato juice. Then I'm also going to save the seeds and the skin so nothing goes to waste, and then I'm going to use that to continue to process it down to paste. And tomato paste is just very, very like concentrated tomatoes, because you get pretty much all the liquid out of it. And so tomato paste is great to use in recipes. I always like to use it when I'm making tomato sauce, like pizza sauce or spaghetti sauce, and it's great to have. I'm not going to can the paste. I'm actually going to freeze it, and I'll show you how I'm going to freeze it when we get to that step. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, because we still got a lot to do. And this is only process number 1. Because, as you remember, which you can probably see in the frame, we have 1, 2, 3.5 more bags to go. Okay, sleeves are going up, and we're gonna begin. If you had something like a food mill, that would make this process go a lot faster and a lot easier, but I do not have such a thing. So I'm gonna ladle. You can see how hot it is. That's great. I'm gonna ladle my tomatoes into my mesh strainer and just take my spatula and really move it around, and I'm gonna really go at it. I don't want to like leave any of the juice. I want it to all come out. So stir around, press it down. But also, the more liquid you can get out in this stage, obviously not only adds to your amount of tomato juice you're getting, but is also going to have the process for making the paste just be that much quicker, because that's just that much less liquid to get out of it. So then when you are satisfied with the amount of liquid you've gotten out, then put your stuff in a separate bowl. And this is where some people may throw away the skins and seeds, but not I. Not I. I like to try to use the most I can, and to the point that some people may say that's a bit too much. Even if I find tomatoes that are, kind of bad on one side, you just cut it off and you just use what's still good. To me, it's not only just because, of course, I'm growing these things to make stuff, and it's to save money, it's to have a better product, but also I just don't like being wasteful in general. there's so much waste that does accumulate in the world, and wherever I can not waste but make use, and not only make use but make good use, I'm going to go ahead and do that. But this process is probably going to take me some time, so I will catch back up with you when this part is done and we're starting to fill the jars. Oh my goodness gracious, I am hot. Everything is hot in this kitchen, but that is all done. It is all in this pot, and it is all beautiful. It is just liquid, and I'm gonna go ahead and put this on the stove and get the liquid by itself to a boil, and then boil it on a medium temperature for about 10 minutes, and then it'll be ready to be packed into our jars, which are also ready. This is gonna process for 15 minutes, and I guess that means we have to be on to the next batch of things. Oh, and first, let's go ahead and see. This is how much we got of skins and seeds, and clearly you can see I did not do the most thorough job, as there is liquid coming out of this still. But that is okay, actually, because you do need to have a little bit of liquid when processing down the skins and seeds, or it would literally just burn. So that's okay. I won't have to add any additional liquid. And that is going to get thrown on the stove with that little bit of juice that was remaining. And I'll just start cooking down in that pot. I think that's what I'm going to start doing next. So let me grab that and get that going. I will have a lot of cleaning up to do after this. My question is, are you really somebody that cooks if you don't make a huge mess every time? These are on, and I have them on high. Once it gets to a nice consistent roll, then I will turn it down to medium and do the same thing. Stir it about every 30 minutes or so. And this time we're really gonna wait for it to really start breaking down, but it shouldn't take too long since we took so much of the moisture out of it already. And by not too long, I mean instead of 8 hours, maybe like 4 or 5. But I do have a trick to make the process go a little smoother that I will show you once this gets down a little bit on the stove. It is time for my first trick, which is the immersion blender. And like I say all the time, I don't, recommend things all the time for purchasing. But if you don't have one of these, this is something you really want to have. It is a great versatile tool for many purposes, and it is going to help us here to make this something that we wouldn't mind putting in our recipes. So I'm just going to go ahead and break up all these skins and seeds, and I won't make you listen to the sound of it because it's definitely kind of loud, but that's what I'm going to do. Okay, I think we're good. It looks beautiful. I'll go ahead and grab you and show you. Look how nice and thick that looks already, and you can't really see anything, at least I can't. If you can point it out if you'd like. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn the oven, or not the oven, the stovetop off. And my second trick is I'm not going to completely do this on the stovetop. I'm going to go ahead and grab a pan and put this in the pan and put it in the oven at a low temperature. 230 is going to work fine. That's what I have for my other tomatoes in here. You can do it up to 250 if you'd like, but keep it really thin. That's the key. No more than an inch is probably too thick. You want to try to keep it quite thin, and you're going to want to go in there every hour, every half hour, and make sure you're scraping the sides, because if you don't, just like with the pot, the sides get hottest first, and then you can have burn, and that's not quite the flavor you're probably going for. I'm probably going to need to grab a couple of glass pans I'll grab. That'll be great, and then it'll really get all that moisture out, and then we're going to freeze it actually. So before I say too much more, let me just go get to the pans. So something like this is kind of what I am talking about. Scoop. Look how beautiful. And I don't know if you can tell, but I can tell. It is much lighter. It is a much more orangey kind of color than what you would typically get in the store. And that's, like I said, because of my different varieties of tomatoes. So that's really cool. I might just put one little bit more. It's okay to do it thicker. Like if you don't have any other kinds of pans or anything, it just takes longer. So that's why I'm trying to do it pretty thin. I think I'm just going to go with that. You see there? I definitely need more pans. I'm running out of space. This whole kitchen definitely looks like a tomato bomb went off. It is insanity. So this is not for the faint of heart. Yeah, but it's definitely worth it. Definitely worth it. Okay, we managed to do it in 2. And I'm going to go ahead and stick these in because I already got my oven going. And then the process begins. Hooray!
So as we went into the evening, I pulled it out, and this is what you want to do basically, is just scrape the sides and kind of mix it together and then re-splat it out. I guess is how you'd say it. And then just keep pulling it out and checking it every 40 minutes or so until it is as dry as you want it. And then what I do is use a ice cream scoop and just make little pucks with it. And I'm just putting it on a tray to put in the freezer. And after it's frozen, you just have to pop it off and store them in a freezer bag to then pull out one at a time to put in sauces or soups or whatever you like. And it's great.
It is a brand new day, and somehow I managed to last night get all the dishes done up except for a few that just had to soak to be washed, but got all the dishes done by 7:30 and had the process stop at a good spot. Today we just have to finish the second batch, so that means canning up. I have to reheat the juice, get the canner going, can the juice, and then I have to heat the oven up now that I'm thinking about it, and I have to get the tomato paste rendered down and then put that batch in the freezer. But I'm going to go ahead and get that out. First, I'm going to go ahead and get the juice heated up, and this is more than the first batch for sure. So I think it might be closer to 6 quarts opposed to the 5 quarts. So we'll see. If that's the case, I'm not going to run the canner for one more can. I'll just use it. I think I'll make chili tonight, so I can just use it in the chili. This is all the skins and seeds. So I do have another pot that I can put that in to start rendering it down now. So I think I'll do that. The canner is cleaning the jars right now. So yeah, that's great. Oh, another thing I can do, we can check on our paste. Beautiful. Look at that. Perfect. And these will pop right off. Yep, they pop right off. So I'm just gonna go ahead and grab one of my bags. And so now these are perfect for just putting in recipes that call for paste, because usually you don't need that much tomato paste in most recipes. You just need a little bit to thicken it. So these being pre-portioned out in these little pucks just make it so much easier. And I definitely prefer this method for storing the paste opposed to canning it up. Just because, one, like I said, you usually don't need a whole pint jar of paste. And it's just so simple to do it this way. I also want to show you real quick, if I can, that this is really what we're looking for. See how it just is kind of thicker? That's what you want to see in a nice tomato juice. It's not super watery. It's not like thick, it's still a juice, but you want to see that almost not quite as thick as most gravies, but almost like that kind of gravy thickness. So for a lot of the rest of this process, I'm just going to kind of speed it through. One, because I've already shown it, because we're doing the same thing. And two, so I can listen to something while I do it. I'm currently listening to a whole series on off-grid living, so I definitely am interested in hearing about that while I'm doing this process. But I will join you once again at the very end, and I will tell you how much we're able to make with how many tomatoes, and just kind of talk about that excitement and the success. So I will see you at the end. And it is the final day of tomato processing, and it was done yesterday except for just getting the paste out of the freezer. So the total is we used 40 pounds of tomatoes, and that made 10 jars of tomato juice and a huge bag of paste. This is about 55 pucks, little pucks of paste, and most recipes you're only going to need one. So I call that a huge success. I am just so happy with the abundance of tomatoes. There's more still growing, so I'm sure I'll be making more things. Probably the next time I do tomatoes, I'll just do some whole or crushed tomatoes to put away. But I'm really happy with what we did. Just a note for you, if you're making this, I noticed that this tomato juice, which was the first batch, I didn't really get to a full boil from once it was separated, because it was already still super hot, and it just seems a little more separated, which is not a big deal. But this batch that I did have to re-boil completely because it was cold from being in the fridge just seems a little less separated, so that's something to keep in mind. Here's maybe a little bit of a better comparison, but it's really not a big deal. Oh, and last night I made tomato soup with the homegrown tomato juice, and it was excellent. It was so good. I'm so happy about it. But thank you for joining me in this video. If you like this kind of content and would like to see more in the future, please consider subscribing to join this community of like-minded folk. I currently put up a new video every single Monday, so I do hope you will check back in for the next one. I do content just around my urban homestead and me trying to live a slower, simple, more natural life, and trying to help you do the same. But that is gonna do it for today, so I do hope to see you next time. Bye-bye!